Welcome to our comprehensive series on Indian rivers, water disputes, and river interlinking. Before we look at specific rivers, we need to understand the basic terminology of drainage systems. When rain falls, the specific area that collects this water for a river is its catchment area. When we include the river and all its connecting tributaries, we call that entire region a drainage basin. The network these channels form is the drainage system, and the elevated boundary that separates one basin from another is known as a drainage divide. Finally, size matters in these terms. Large river catchments are called river basins, while smaller stream catchments are referred to as watersheds. Now, let's classify India's drainage system based on where the water ends up. If we look at the discharge of water, we see a massive split. Only 23% of India's drainage flows west into the Arabian Sea, including major rivers like the Indus, Narmada, and Tapi. The vast majority, 77%, flows east into the Bay of Bengal, carried by giants like the Ganga and Brahmaputra. These two massive drainage groups don't just mix, they are physically separated by a major water divide formed by the Delhi Ridge, the Aravallis, and the Western Ghats. You might wonder why there is such a huge disparity, with the Bay of Bengal receiving so much more fresh water. There are three main reasons. First, the eastern drainage area gets rainfall from both the southwest and northeast monsoons, whereas the west gets much less. Second, the sheer volume of water from the massive Himalayan rivers, like the Ganga and Brahmaputra, alongside major peninsular rivers, is directed east. Finally, the Bay of Bengal region experiences a much higher frequency of heavy cyclonic rainfall. Another way to classify rivers is by the sheer size of their watershed. We divide them into three tiers. Major river basins are massive, with catchment areas exceeding 20,000 square kilometers. There are 14 of these in India, including the Ganga and Krishna. Medium river basins have catchments between 2,000 and 20,000 square kilometers, encompassing 44 basins like the Periyar. Lastly, minor river basins cover less than 2,000 square kilometers, consisting of numerous smaller rivers that usually flow through areas with lower rainfall. We can also look at the type of drainage, specifically whether a river actually makes it to the ocean. Most major rivers, like the Ganga, Godavari, and Narmada, drain directly into the seas. However, some rivers feature inland drainage, known as endorheic basins. These are rivers like the Luni and Ghaggar, which flow inland and eventually dry up or empty into landlocked lakes and swamps without ever reaching the ocean. Let's shift to classification by origin, starting with the mighty Himalayan drainage. These rivers, including the Ganga, Indus, and Brahmaputra, are perennial because they are fed by both melting glaciers and monsoon rains. In their steep upper courses, they aggressively erode the landscape, carving deep gorges and V-shaped valleys. As they reach the flatter middle and lower courses, they slow down, depositing massive amounts of silt to form floodplains and deltas. Because they carry so much sediment, they often meander and change paths. A famous example is the river Kosi, known as the Sorrow of Bihar, which frequently shifts its course and causes severe flooding. South of the Himalayas, we find the peninsular drainage system. Geologically, this system is much older than the Himalayan rivers. You can see this age in their landscape. The rivers flow through broad, shallow, graded valleys, indicating they have reached maturity. The Western Ghats act as the primary water divide here. Unlike the wild, shifting Himalayan rivers, peninsular rivers have fixed courses, do not meander, and are non-perennial, meaning they rely heavily on monsoon rains. Interestingly, some rivers like the Chambal and Son originate in the northern peninsula, but actually flow north to join the Ganga system. Now, in geography, there are almost always exceptions to the rules. In the peninsular system, those exceptions are the Narmada and Tapi rivers. While most major peninsular rivers flow east into the Bay of Bengal, the Narmada and Tapi flow west into the Arabian Sea. Furthermore, unlike typical peninsular rivers, they have meandering courses and maintain a perennial flow. Why? Because they flow through ancient, deep rift valleys, which completely alter their hydrological behavior. Another fascinating feature of these west-flowing peninsular rivers is what happens when they meet the sea. Instead of forming sprawling, muddy deltas, they form estuaries. To build a delta, a river needs to deposit massive amounts of silt. West-flowing rivers simply don't have enough silt for three reasons. First, the steep slopes of the Western Ghats make the water flow too rapidly to drop sediment. Second, they travel a very short distance to the sea. And third, the terrain they cross is hard and rocky, meaning there is very little soil being eroded in the first place.
Let's summarize the differences between the Himalayan and peninsular systems side by side. Himalayan rivers originate from glaciers, making them long, high-volume rivers carrying heavy sediment loads. Because they have steep mountain gradients, they offer high hydroelectric potential and aren't solely reliant on the monsoon. Peninsular rivers, conversely, originate from rain-fed hills and plateaus. They are shorter, carry less water and sediment due to flowing over older, harder rock, and are heavily dependent on the monsoon rains, with generally lower hydroelectric potential.
Finally, if we zoom in just on the peninsular rivers and compare the east-flowing to the west-flowing, distinct patterns emerge. East-flowing rivers start on the eastern slopes of the Western Alps, traveling long distances to form large basins with complex branch-like tributary systems. They end by creating massive, fertile deltas, crucial for agriculture. West-flowing rivers start on the western slopes, have a short, rapid journey, feature very few tributaries, and end in estuaries rather than deltas. With these foundational classifications in mind, we are perfectly positioned to explore specific river networks, starting with the mighty Indus River system. Moving right along to the Indus River system, this massive basin extends across Tibet, India, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. In India alone, it covers nearly 10% of the total geographical area. The basin is naturally bounded by major mountain ranges, like the Himalayas and Karakoram. The distribution of its waters is governed by the 1960 Indus Waters Treaty between India and Pakistan. The main Indus River itself is 2,880 kilometers long, originating in Tibet, where it is known as the Lion's Mouth. It is fed by numerous tributaries, with Leh situated prominently on its right bank.
Let us look at the Chenab River, which is actually the largest tributary of the Indus. It is often called the Chandrabhaga because it is formed when two distinct streams, the Chandra and the Bhaga, merge at Tandi in Himachal Pradesh. After flowing through Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir, it eventually joins the Indus in Pakistan. The river is crucial for power generation, hosting major hydroelectric projects like the Baglihar, Dilhasti, and Salal dams. Next is the Jhelum River, which originates from a spring at Varinag at the base of the Pir Panjal Range. Historically known as Hydaspes by the Greeks, it serves as the main waterway of the Kashmir Valley. It famously flows right through Srinagar and the Wular Lake before crossing into Pakistan to join the Chenab. The Uri Dam is a significant hydroelectric project located on this river.
Now, let us explore the Ravi and Beas rivers. Both originate near the Rohtang Pass in Himachal Pradesh. The Ravi flows through the picturesque Chamba Valley and eventually joins the Chenab. It supports several dams like the Ranjit Sagar. The Beas, on the other hand, flows through the Kulu Valley and meets the Sutlej River entirely within Indian territory near Harike. The Pong Dam is a notable project on the Beas.
The Sutlej River is fascinating because it is an antecedent river, meaning it existed even before the Himalayas were formed. Originating in Tibet, it is the longest tributary of the Indus and is the primary water source for the massive Bakra Nungal project. Before the combined waters of the Sutlej, Beas, Ravi, Chenab, and Jhelum join the main Indus River, they merge to form a single stream known as the Panjnad. This convergence of 5 rivers gives the region of Punjab its name. Let us review some previous year questions to see how this system is tested. In 2021, students were asked which river joins the Indus directly, with the answer being the Sutlej. A 2009 question highlighted that, unlike the Beas, Ravi, and Chenab, the Sutlej does not originate in India, but rather in Tibet. Finally, a 2006 question required mapping rivers from north to south, placing Shyok at the top, followed by Zaskar, Spiti, and finally the Sutlej. Here is a consolidated look at the major hydroelectric projects in the Indus Basin. Notice how the projects are distributed across Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir, capitalizing on the steep gradients of these Himalayan rivers. Key examples include the Bakra project on the Sutlej and the Dilhasti project on the Chenab.
Transitioning to the Ganga River system, this basin is the largest in India, covering a staggering 26% of the country's geographical area. The river originates in the Gangotri Glacier as the Bhagirathi. It is only after it meets the Alaknanda River at Devprayag that it officially takes the name Ganga. It flows for over 2,500 kilometers before splitting at Farakka, sending one branch through West Bengal and the main branch into Bangladesh.
A crucial geographical and cultural concept within the Ganga system is the Panch Prayag, or the 5 sacred confluences. The Alaknanda River acts as the main spine here. As it flows downward, it is joined by the Doli Ganga at Vishnu Prayag,
the Nandakini at Nandprayag, the Pindari at Karnaprayag, the Mandakini at Rudraprayag, and finally the Bhagirathi at Devprayag, where the Ganga is officially formed.
The Ganga is fed by numerous tributaries. The Ramganga joins it relatively early near Kanauj, while the Mahananda is its final left bank tributary in West Bengal. The most significant, however, is the Yamuna. It is the westernmost and longest tributary of the Ganga, originating from the Yamuna Tree Glacier and flowing past major cities like Delhi and Agra before merging with the Ganga at Prayagraj.
The Yamuna itself has a vast network of tributaries. The Tons River is actually its largest tributary, joining near Dehradun. Further south, the Chambal River is famous for its rugged badland topography, known as ravines. We also have the Betwa and Ken rivers, which are currently part of a major national river interlinking project. The Ken River notably flows right through the Panna National Park. Moving to the left bank tributaries of the Ganga, these rivers largely originate in the Himalayas. The Gandak flows past major national parks, while the Bori Gandak is notable for creating the Kanwar Lake, a residual oxbow lake. The Gagara is a massive river joined by the Sharda. Finally, the Kosi River, formed by 3 converging streams, is infamous as the sorrow of Bihar because it frequently shifts its course and causes devastating floods. 2 other major rivers in the Ganga system flow from the southern plateaus. The Son River originates in the Amarkantak Plateau and flows north to join the Ganga near Patna. Further east, the Damodar River rises in the Chota Nagpur Plateau. Historically, it caused such severe flooding it was called the Sorrow of Bengal, but today its waters are managed by the Damodar Valley Corporation. When the Ganga crosses into Bangladesh, it takes on the name Padma. It is soon joined by the Jamuna, which is the local name for the Brahmaputra, and eventually merges into the Meghna River before emptying into the Bay of Bengal. The entire Ganga basin is heavily utilized for power, featuring massive projects like the Tehri Dam on the Bhagirathi and the Rihan Dam in Uttar Pradesh. Let us analyze a few past questions on the Ganga basin. A tricky 2010 question asked which rivers pass through Himachal Pradesh. Many forget that the Yamuna briefly touches its southern tip, making the answer Beas, Chenab, Ravi, Sutlej, and Yamuna. In 1998, the UPSC asked about a river in a rift valley caused by downwarping, which is the Damodar. Another question required identifying the Kosi, Gomti, Gagara, and Gandak from a map of rivers flowing from Nepal. Now we turn to the mighty Brahmaputra river system. Originating in Tibet as the Sangpo, it flows eastward before making a dramatic U-turn near Namcha Barwa to enter India. Initially called the Dihang, it becomes the Brahmaputra after the Dibang and Lohit rivers join it. Because its catchment area receives immense rainfall, the river carries a massive sediment load, making it infamous for severe floods and constant channel shifting. The Brahmaputra is fed by several powerful tributaries. The Subansiri is the largest, acting as an antecedent river cutting through the mountains. The Manas River is notable for flowing through the Royal Manas National Park across the Bhutan-India border. Further west, the Teesta River acts as the lifeline of Sikkim and North Bengal before joining the Brahmaputra inside Bangladesh. Here are some ways the Brahmaputra system has been tested. A 2017 question correctly identified the Ranjit as a tributary of the Teesta. In 2016, students had to recognize Dibang, Kameng, and Lohit as Brahmaputra tributaries. A fascinating 2011 question asked why the river makes a sharp U-turn into India. The answer lies in tectonic forces causing the syntaxial bending of the young Himalayan rock layers. Adjacent to the Brahmaputra is the Barak River system, separated by the Bareil Range. The Barak rises in Manipur and flows into Bangladesh, where it eventually takes the name Meghna before joining the combined Ganga-Brahmaputra flow. The northeastern region also hosts several critical hydroelectric projects, such as the Lower Subansiri and the Teesta dams, harnessing the immense water power of these basins. Shifting our focus to the east-flowing peninsular rivers, we start with the Godavari. It is the second largest river basin in India and is often revered as the Dakshina Ganga. Originating in Nashik, Maharashtra, it flows across the peninsula to form a massive low-bait delta on the east coast. It is supported by major tributaries like the Manjira on the right bank and the Indrawati on the left. The Pranahita River deserves special mention as the Godavari's largest tributary. It is actually formed by the merging of 3 rivers, the Penganga, Warda, and Wainganga. In 2015, the UPSC tested this by asking students to identify Godavari's tributaries from a list, where Indravati and Pranahita were the correct answers. An older question required arranging rivers from north to south, placing Wainganga just above Penganga. Next is the Krishna River system, which rises near Mahabaleshwar. It is a vital irrigation source for multiple states. Its major right bank tributary is the Tungabhadra, formed by the Tunga and Bhadra streams. The land between the Tungabhadra and Krishna is the historically significant Raichur Doab, with the ancient city of Hampi sitting right on the river's banks. The basin features massive dams like Nagarjuna Saga and Sri Salem. Let us look at a recent 2023 question that combined river knowledge with important lakes. It correctly stated that Jhelum passes through Wooler Lake and that the Gondak's meandering formed Kanwar Lake. However, it incorrectly claimed the Krishna directly feeds Koleru Lake. In reality, Koleru sits between the Krishna and Godavari deltas and is fed by seasonal streams, acting as a natural flood balancing reservoir. Moving further south, we find the Kalvari River system. Originating in the Brahmagiri hills of Karnataka, it is the second largest east-flowing river in the peninsula. It boasts numerous tributaries, like the Hemavati on the left and the Kabini and Bhavani on the right. The river is heavily utilized for power and irrigation, featuring historic projects like the Shiva Samudram and the massive Matur Dam. Heading back up the eastern coast, the Mahanadi River system originates in Chhattisgarh. In terms of water potential, it ranks second only to the Godavari. A critical tributary here is the Hasdeo River, which flows through the Hasdale-Arand forest, often called the lungs of Chhattisgarh. The Mahanadi is also famous for the Hirakud Dam, one of the longest earthen dams in the world. Further north along the east coast, we have the Suburnaka, Brahmani, and Baitarni rivers. The Brahmani is formed by the merging of the South Koil and Sonk rivers. Interestingly, the Brahmani and Baitarni merge to form a common delta before entering the Bay of Bengal. As highlighted in a 2011 UPSC question, this merging point is home to the famous Bhitarkanika National Park, a critical habitat for saltwater crocodiles. Rounding out the east-flowing rivers, we have several smaller but vital systems. The Pennar rises in the Nandi-Durg range. The Palar and Ponayar rivers flow through highly urbanized areas, with the Ponayar unfortunately suffering from severe pollution. Finally, the Vaigai River in Tamil Nadu flows past the historic city of Madurai and empties into the Palk Bay. Let us review how these peninsular rivers appear in exams. In 2022, students learned that the spectacular Gandikota Canyon was carved by the Pennar River. A 2021 question required knowing that the Nagavalli and Vamsadhara rivers originate in the Eastern Ghats. And a 2009 question tested exceptions to the rule, pointing out that Kerala does have east-flowing rivers like the Kabini, and Madhya Pradesh has west-flowing rivers like the Narmada. Continuing with past questions, a 2008 question correctly matched Jog Falls with the Sharavathi River and Shiva Samudram with the Kaveri. A classic mapping question from 2002 asked for the north-to-south sequence of major east-flowing rivers, starting with Subarnarekha and ending with Vaigai. Finally, a 2006 question tested basic origins, noting that the Kaveri rises in Karnataka, not Andhra Pradesh. Now we switch directions to the west-flowing peninsular rivers, starting with the mighty Narmada. It is the largest west-flowing river in the peninsula. Originating at the Amarkantek Plateau, it flows through a deep rift valley flanked by the Vindhya and Satpura ranges. Along its course, it creates the stunning Dhuandar waterfall near Jabalpur before draining into the Arabian Sea. It hosts massive dams like the Sardar Sarovar. The Narmada's unique geography makes it a frequent exam topic. In 2013, the UPSC asked why it flows west contrary to most peninsular rivers. The primary reason is that it occupies a linear rift valley created by tectonic movements. A 2019 question highlighted the Amarkantak Plateau as a unique origin point, where the Narmada flows west, while the Son River flows north to eventually reach the Bay of Bengal. More questions on this region include a straightforward 2007 query confirming Narmada's origin at Amarkantak. In 2008, students had to associate the Omkareshwar multipurpose project with the Narmada River. Another 2008 question tested tributary knowledge across systems, requiring students to know that Chambal feeds the Yamuna, Son feeds the Ganga, and Manas feeds the Brahmaputra. Just south of the Narmada is its twin, the Tapti or Tapi River. It is the second largest west-flowing river in the peninsula. Originating near the Multai Reserve Forest in Madhya Pradesh, it flows parallel to the Narmada, bounded by the Satpura and Ajanta ranges. The river is heavily utilized in Gujarat, most notably by the Ukai Dam project. Moving to Gujarat and Rajasthan, we find the Sabarmati and Mahi rivers. The Sabarmati rises in the Aravalli Hills and flows south to the Arabian Sea. The Mahi River is particularly unique geographically because it crosses the Tropic of Cancer twice along its course. Both rivers are crucial for regional water supply and host major projects like the Kadana Dam. Down in Kerala, the steep Western Ghats dictate several important west-flowing rivers. The Periyar is the longest, famous for the massive Idukki Dam. The Bharathapuja is the second longest, capturing heavy monsoon rains. The Pamba, the third longest, holds immense cultural significance as the Dakshin Bhagirathi, with the famous Sabarimala temple located on its banks. The Luni River is unique because it never reaches the sea. Originating in the Aravallis, it is an endorheic river that simply dissipates into the marshy Rann of Kutch, a fact tested in a 2010 UPSC question. Another conceptual question from 2004 asked why west-flowing peninsula rivers do not form deltas. The answer is that they flow through hard rocky terrain and lack the loose alluvial sediments needed to build deltas, forming estuaries instead. Let us consolidate our knowledge with some major facts, starting with the top 10 longest rivers in India. The Ganga tops the list for length within Indian territory at 2,525 kilometers, followed by the Godavari, Krishna, Yamuna, and Narmada. However, if we consider total length including flow outside India, the Indus is the longest, followed by the Brahmaputra and then the Ganga. Knowing which cities lie on which riverbanks is crucial for both geography and history. The Ganga supports ancient cities like Varanasi and Kanpur. The Yamuna flows past Delhi and Agra. Down south, the Godavari sustains Nashik, while the Krishna flows through Vijayawada. Hyderabad sits on the Musi, a tributary of the Krishna, and Ahmedabad is famously located on the Sabarmati. We have mentioned many dams, but let us highlight the record breakers. The Terry Dam on the Bhagirathi is the tallest in India. The Hirakud Dam on the Mahanadi holds the title for the longest earthen dam in the world. Meanwhile, the Indira Sagar Dam on the Narmada creates the largest reservoir in India by water volume, followed closely by the Nagarjuna Sagar on the Krishna. Finally, let us look at how these major facts are tested. A 2003 question required ranking rivers by length, correctly placing Godavari before Narmada, Mahanadi, and Tapi. A 2019 question matched cities to rivers, noting Pandharpur on the Chandrabhaga and Tiruchirappalli on the Kaveri. Other questions required matching Jabalpur to the Narmada and Ujjain to the Shipra. We will continue our discussion by looking at river water disputes in the next segment. Continuing our examination of water resource management, let's look at a major international case, the river water disputes between India and Pakistan. Following the partition in 1947, the two nations adopted the Inter-Dominion Accord in 1948. Under this early framework, India was required to provide water to Pakistan, and in return, Pakistan was to make annual payments. However, this arrangement proved unstable, and the agreement ultimately failed, leaving a pressing need for a more permanent solution. With the failure of the 1948 Accord, both India and Pakistan independently applied to the World Bank. They were seeking funding for various irrigation projects across the Indus River system. Recognizing the potential for escalating conflict over these vital water resources, the World Bank stepped in and offered to formally mediate the water-sharing dispute between the two nations. This mediation culminated in a historic agreement. In 1960, the Indus Waters Treaty, often abbreviated as the IWT, was officially signed. The signatories included India's former Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, Pakistan's then President Ayub Khan, and representing the mediating body, W.A.B. Iliffe, who was the former Vice President of the World Bank. The core of the Indus Waters Treaty prescribed exactly how the water from 6 major rivers would be shared. It allocated the 3 western rivers, namely the Indus, the Chenab, and the Jhelum, to Pakistan. Pakistan was granted unrestricted use of these waters, with a specific caveat. India was still permitted certain non-consumptive, agricultural, and domestic uses of these rivers before they flowed into Pakistan. Conversely, the treaty addressed the 3 eastern rivers of the basin, the Ravi, the Beas, and the Sutlej. These 3 rivers were allocated entirely to India. Unlike the western rivers, India was granted completely unrestricted usage of these eastern waters for its own agricultural and developmental needs. When you calculate the actual volume of water flowing through these specific river assignments, the division is quite stark. The treaty effectively meant that 80% of the total water in the Indus system went to Pakistan, leaving the remaining 20% of the water for use by India. Now, let's look closer at the specific rules governing the western rivers, which are detailed in the treaty's annexures. Even though Pakistan has the primary rights over the waters of the Jhelum, Chenab, and Indus, Annexure C of the treaty explicitly allows India to utilize these waters for certain agricultural purposes.
Furthermore, Annexure D is highly significant for India's energy sector. It permits India to construct run-of-the-river hydroelectric power projects on these western rivers. A run-of-the-river project is specifically defined here as one that generates electricity from the natural flow of the river and does not require the live storage or damming up of large reservoirs of water. However, this right to build hydropower projects comes with strict conditions. The treaty provides exact design specifications that India must follow to ensure the natural flow isn't disrupted. Additionally, India is obligated to share its project designs, or any alterations made to them, with Pakistan. Once Pakistan receives these designs, they have a 3-month window to review them and raise any objections.
Aside from run-of-the-river energy generation, the treaty also addresses safety and environmental management. It allows India to maintain a minimum storage level on the western rivers. This is strictly permitted for conservation efforts and for flood storage purposes, helping to manage seasonal surges in water volume.
To manage this complex sharing arrangement, the treaty required the establishment of a permanent Indus Commission. This body is constituted by permanent commissioners from both India and Pakistan. It serves a vital role as the first stop for the resolution of any conflicts or disagreements, and the treaty mandates that this commission must meet at least once every year.
When disagreements do arise, the Indus Waters Treaty provides a very specific 3-step graded dispute resolution mechanism. The first step is direct negotiation. Any disputes are supposed to be resolved right there at the Permanent Commission, or through direct intergovernmental dialogue between the two nations.
If those direct talks fail, the process moves to the second step. For these unresolved disputes, either India or Pakistan has the right to approach the World Bank. The World Bank is then tasked with appointing a neutral expert, whose job is to analyze the technical details of the disagreement and come to a binding decision. Finally, we have the third step. If either party is not satisfied with the decision made by the neutral expert, or if the dispute is fundamentally about how to interpret the legal text of the treaty itself, the matter can be escalated and referred to a formal court of arbitration. Seriously, this brings us to the core of the modern contention between the two countries, India's hydroelectric projects. The present disputes heavily involve the Kishanganga and Ratle projects, located in Jammu and Kashmir. India maintains that these projects are absolutely crucial for the region's energy needs and overall development. Pakistan, on the other hand, consistently raises objections, arguing that these projects violate the treaty and will have negative effects on their water supply downstream. Let's look at the specifics of these projects, starting with the Kishanganga Hydroelectric Project, or KEP. India proposed building this in 2007. It is located in the Bandipur district of Jammu and Kashmir. The project sits on the Kishanganga River, which is also known as the Neelam River. This river is a tributary of the Jhelum. It originates in Jammu and Kashmir and eventually joins the Jhelum in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The second major point of contention is the Ratle Hydroelectric Project. This facility is being built on the Chenab River, and it is located in the Kishtwar district of Jammu and Kashmir. Beyond Kishanganga and Ratle, Pakistan has raised objections under the treaty regarding several other Indian projects. These include the Salal Dam project on the Chenab River in the Riyasi district, the Baglihar hydropower project, also on the Chenab in the Doda district, and the Pakal Dol project, again on the Chenab, located in the Kishtwar district. The list of objections continues with the Lower Kalnai project, which is situated on the Kalnai River, a tributary of the Chenab, spanning the Kishtwar and Doda districts. Finally, Pakistan has also objected to the Kiru project, which is another facility built on the Chenab River in the Kishtwar district. The dispute over the Kishanganga project actually went through the formal legal mechanisms. In 2010, Pakistan escalated the KEP dispute to the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague. In 2013, the court gave its final ruling, largely in favor of India, citing that KEP legitimately qualifies as a run-of-river dam under the treaty. However, the court did stipulate a condition: India must maintain a minimum flow of water downstream. That 2013 ruling did not end the conflict. In 2016, tensions flared again. Pakistan requested the World Bank to form a new court of arbitration to look into the issues. In direct response to this, India requested that a neutral expert be appointed instead, pointing to the graded step-by-step mechanism of the treaty. Faced with these conflicting requests, the World Bank temporarily paused the works on both the Kishanganga and Ratle projects. Despite the World Bank's pause, India continued its work on the Kishanganga project, and it was officially inaugurated in 2018. The legal stalemate dragged on until 2022, when the World Bank decided to act on both nations' requests simultaneously.
They appointed Michelle Lino as the neutral expert and Professor Sean Murphy as the chairman of the Court of Arbitration. This dual appointment leads us to India's present stand on the dispute redressal process. Currently, India is actively participating in the proceedings led by the neutral expert. However, India is strictly abstaining from participating in any of the proceedings at the Permanent Court of Arbitration. India's rationale for this boycott is based on procedural history. India points out that in 2015, Pakistan initially asked for a neutral expert, but then abruptly changed their request to a court of arbitration in 2016. India alleges that this behavior violates the treaty's established dispute resolution mechanism. According to India's legal interpretation, running parallel proceedings, a neutral expert, and a court of arbitration simultaneously on the exact same issues is simply not covered or permitted under any provision of the Indus Waters Treaty. The Court of Arbitration, however, disagreed with India's boycott. In July 2023, the Permanent Court of Arbitration officially rejected India's objections and confirmed its own legal competence to resolve the dispute. Despite this ruling, India firmly maintains its position. It will not join the Pakistan-initiated proceedings at the Court of Arbitration as long as a neutral expert is already examining the dispute under the treaty's framework. Because of this ongoing procedural deadlock, India has taken a significant diplomatic step, calling for the formal modification of the Indus Waters Treaty itself. India states that this call for modification is a direct result of Pakistan's intransigence and refusal to cooperate over the treaty's implementation. India has outlined specific reasons and goals for this modification. First, regarding legal principles, India argues that rather than relying so heavily on dispute redressal through courts, the treaty needs to be updated. They propose incorporating modern international water law concepts, specifically the principles of equitable and reasonable utilization and the no harm rule, directly into the text of the treaty. Second, India emphasizes the human and developmental aspects. They argue there is a pressing need to involve local stakeholders in any negotiation process regarding these shared waters, rather than keeping it strictly at the highest diplomatic levels. Furthermore, a modified treaty should explicitly recognize the common interests of both countries to ensure the optimum shared development of the entire Indus River system. Finally, India points to the simple passage of time. The Indus Waters Treaty was signed over 62 years ago. India argues that amendments are desperately needed because the realities on the ground, the environmental conditions, population demands, and overall situation in the Indus River Basin region have changed drastically since 1960. With these proposed modifications to the International Indus Waters Treaty in mind, we will next turn our attention to domestic water conflicts, starting with the Cowrie water dispute. Moving on to specific interstate water disputes, let us examine the long-standing Kaveri River dispute between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. The roots of this complex conflict trace all the way back to the colonial era. During that time, the British government had to mediate and allocate the river's waters between the princely state of Mysore and the Madras Presidency. The pacts they signed, specifically the 1892 and 1924 agreements, essentially laid the historical foundation for the disputes we still see today. In 1924, a definitive agreement was reached that allocated fixed water shares to the regions involved. This agreement was said to last for a period of 50 years. Under its terms, the lion's share of the water, 75%, was allocated to Tamil Nadu and Puducherry. Mysore was allocated 23%, and the small remaining portion was given to Kerala, which was then known as Travancore. A crucial stipulation of the 1924 agreement was regarding infrastructure. It explicitly stated that the upper riparian state, in Karnataka, had to obtain consent from the lower riparian state, Tamil Nadu, before undertaking any construction on the Kaveri River, such as building reservoirs. Over the years, several major dams were constructed. Karnataka built the Krishnaraja Sagar, Harangi, Hemavati, and Kabini dams, while Tamil Nadu constructed the massive Mettur Dam across the mainstream of the Kaveri. The situation escalated significantly in 1974. Because the 1924 agreement had a strict 50-year lifespan, its expiration meant the legal framework governing the water sharing lapsed. Following this, Karnataka began diverting water for its own needs without seeking the consent of Tamil Nadu. This unilateral action triggered the modern, highly contentious phase of the Kaveri dispute. To resolve the growing crisis, the Union government stepped in. Using the powers granted by the Interstate River Water Disputes Act of 1956, they constituted the Kaveri Water Disputes Tribunal in 1990. After years of hearings and assessments, the tribunal issued its final award in 2007. It specified precise water allocations, 419,000 million cubic feet, or TMC, to Tamil Nadu, 270 TMC to Karnataka, 30 TMC to Kerala, and 7 TMC to Puducherry. The tribunal's award was challenged, leading to the Supreme Court's intervention. In 2018, the Supreme Court made a landmark declaration that the Kaveri River is a national asset, meaning no single state can claim exclusive ownership. The court largely upheld the tribunal's award, but modified the allocation slightly. Out of a total 740 TMC, Karnataka was granted an additional 14.75 TMC, bringing its share to 284.75 TMC. Tamil Nadu's share was correspondingly reduced to 404.25 TMC. The shares for Kerala and Puducherry remained unchanged. This new allocation arrangement is set to stand unchanged for 15 years.
The Supreme Court also addressed what happens during heavy monsoon seasons. They defined surplus water as any water exceeding the allocated and committed shares during high flow periods. The court ruled that this surplus must be divided equally among all 4 states. Furthermore, to ensure these rules were followed, the court directed the establishment of a permanent Kaveri Management Board to oversee the sharing formula, monitor reservoir levels, and resolve any ongoing allocation disputes. Following the court's directives, the union government officially established the Kaveri Water Management Scheme in 2018. The primary body under this scheme is the Kaveri Water Management Authority, or CWMA. Its job is to ensure strict compliance with the Supreme Court's modified award. This includes managing the storage, apportionment, and regulation of the waters. Crucially, it supervises the regulated release of water by Karnataka at the interstate contact point, which is currently the Biligundalu Gauge and Discharge Station, located right on the border between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Working alongside the authority is the Kaveri Water Regulation Committee, or CWRC. While the authority handles the broader regulatory and compliance issues, the CWRC is responsible for the day-to-day technical monitoring. They meticulously track the daily water levels, measure the inflows, and record the exact storage positions at all the major reservoirs that hold Kaveri water. So how does this sharing actually work in practice? The river water is shared between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu according to a strict monthly schedule. In what is considered a normal water year, running from June to May, Karnataka is required to release 177.25 TMC of water to Tamil Nadu. The bulk of this, 123.14 TMC, must be released during the southwest monsoon season between June and September. However, when the monsoon fails and there's a deficit season, there isn't enough water to meet these quotas, and this is exactly when the political and legal disputes typically flare up. To understand why Tamil Nadu fights so hard for its water share, we have to look at its agricultural cycles, specifically the Kuruvai and Samba paddy crops. Kuruvai is a short-duration, high-yielding variety of paddy grown between June and September. Samba is the second main season, occurring from August to November. The critical issue here is that the cultivation of both these crops relies entirely on water released from the Mettur Dam, which in turn depends solely on water flowing in from Karnataka. Because the Kaveri Delta receives very little rainfall of its own during the southwest monsoon, without Karnataka's water, these crops would fail. Another major flashpoint in this basin is the Mekedatu Reservoir project. Karnataka proposed this project primarily to secure drinking water for the rapidly growing city of Bengaluru and secondarily to generate about 400 megawatts of hydroelectric power. However, Tamil Nadu strongly opposes this. Their stance is that no project should be built in the upper riparian region unless they receive explicit approval from the Supreme Court, ensuring that the downstream water flow to Tamil Nadu is fully protected. Shifting our focus to the west coast, we encounter another significant interstate dispute, the Kalasa-Banduri Nala project between Karnataka and Goa. This project was undertaken by the Karnataka government to improve the drinking water supply to 3 of its parched districts, Belagavi, Dharwad, and Gadag. The engineering plan involves building barrages across the Kalasa and Banduri streams, which are tributaries of the Mahadayi River. The goal is to divert this water into the Malaprabha River, which is a tributary of the Krishna River. This project was originally planned way back in 1989, but Goa immediately objected, fearing a loss of its vital water resources. To resolve this, the Mahadayi Water Disputes Tribunal was set up in 2010, involving Goa, Karnataka, and Maharashtra. In 2018, the tribunal issued its award, allocating 13.42 TMC of water from the Mahadayi Basin to Karnataka,
1.33 TMC to Maharashtra, and the largest share, 24 TMC, to Goa. The union government officially notified this award in February 2020. To fully grasp this dispute, let's look at the geography of the Mahaday River itself, which is also known as the Mahaday or Mandovi. It originates in the Western Ghats, specifically from the Bhimgad Wildlife Sanctuary in Karnataka's Belagavi district. It is a westward-flowing river that travels through Karnataka and Goa before finally draining into the Arabian Sea. It is considered the absolute lifeline of Goa, with the Mandovi and Zuari being the state's two primary rivers. We will explore the broader concept of interlinking these types of river basins in our next segment. Let us examine the concept of the interlinking of rivers, or ILR. At its core, this is a massive infrastructural vision that involves connecting two or more rivers by building a network of artificial reservoirs and canals. The primary objective here is equity. We want to transfer water from regions that have a surplus, often prone to flooding, to areas that are water deficient and heavily reliant on unpredictable rainfall. Interestingly, this is not a modern idea. It was actually first proposed way back in 1919 by Sir Arthur Cotton, who was the chief engineer of the Madras Presidency. Why is this interlinking so significant? First, it fundamentally redistributes water flow. By moving water around, we can achieve flood control in highly volatile areas, like the Ganga-Brahmaputra-Meghna basin, while simultaneously providing drought relief and irrigation to western and peninsular states like Rajasthan, Gujarat, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu. Second, there is massive hydro potential. These projects could add approximately 34,000 megawatts of hydropower to the nation's energy pool, which would be a game changer for industrial, agricultural, and rural electricity needs. Beyond water and power, there are substantial commercial and social benefits. Creating this network establishes logistics infrastructure, allowing for freight movement through inland waterways, which is much more environmentally friendly than road transport. It also promotes sustainable development by utilizing surface water, which helps recharge our critically depleted groundwater levels and prevents valuable freshwater from simply flowing out into the sea. Socially, bringing water closer to homes drastically reduces the daily burden on women who often walk long distances to fetch it, while the construction and maintenance of these projects generate vital rural employment. However, a project of this magnitude comes with severe challenges. Environmentally, creating massive reservoirs and canals leads to evaporation losses, waterlogging, soil salinity, and the submergence of land. For instance, the proposed Ken-Betwa link threatens parts of the Panna National Park. There is also a significant lack of transparency. Critics argue that the true economic, social, and ecological costs haven't been adequately assessed. Furthermore, climate change is altering traditional rainfall patterns, making it highly uncertain whether these basins will actually remain surplus or deficit in the coming decades. Then we have the political and diplomatic hurdles. In India, water is a state subject. Getting states to agree on water sharing is notoriously difficult. Just look at the historical disputes between Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Internationally, altering river flows raises objections and requires complex coordination with neighboring countries like Bhutan and Nepal. Finally, many experts point out that we have unexplored, less destructive alternatives. Before re-engineering our entire river system, we could invest heavily in watershed development, rainwater harvesting, fixing our existing leaky infrastructure, and shifting to less water-intensive cropping methods. The formal blueprint for all of this is the National Perspective Plan, or NPP. It was formulated back in 1980 by what is now the Ministry of Jal Shakti. The NPP envisions inter-basin water transfers across the country and is divided into two massive components, the Himalayan Rivers Development Component and the Peninsular Rivers Development Component. The plan gathered dust for a while, but in 2002, the Supreme Court of India stepped in and directed the government to complete this plan expeditiously. To execute the National Perspective Plan, the government established the National Water Development Agency, or NWDA, in 1982. The NWDA's primary job was to identify and plan the specific river links. As you can see from the map, they identified 30 distinct link projects, 14 in the Himalayan component up north, and 16 in the peninsular component down south. But remember the federal challenge we discussed? The actual implementation of any of these 30 projects strictly depends on achieving consensus among the specific states involved. To streamline this massive undertaking, the government proposed the National Interlinking of Rivers Authority, or NIRA, to replace the NWDA. NIRA is designed to be a much more powerful, independent, autonomous body. It will handle planning, financing, and implementation. Crucially, it has the authority to coordinate with neighboring countries, grant its own environment and wildlife clearances, raise independent funds, and set up special purpose vehicles, or SPVs, to manage individual river link projects efficiently. The flagship project of this entire initiative is the Ken-Betwa River Interlinking Project. It is the very first project under the NPP to actually get underway. It aims to transfer water from the Ken River in Madhya Pradesh to the Betwa River in Uttar Pradesh, involving multiple dams and barrages across 2 phases to provide both water and hydroelectricity. However, it is highly controversial. The project will submerge significant portions of the Pana Tiger Reserve, and components like the Lower Ore Dam have faced serious legal objections for proceeding without formal environmental clearances. Moving south, we have the Godavari-Krishna Link Project. This aims to divert surplus floodwater from the Godavari River in Andhra Pradesh over to the Krishna River Basin. A major milestone here was the completion of the Pattisima Lift Irrigation Project, which became the first successful river interlinking project of this specific link. By supplying Godavari water to the Prakasam barrage, it frees up the Krishna River's own water, which can then be diverted upstream to irrigate the historically drought-prone Rayalaseema region. Let's look at how this appears in the exams. In the 2016 UPSC prelims, students were asked, recently, linking of which of the following rivers was undertaken. The options were Kaveri and Tungabhadra, Godavari and Krishna, Mahanadi and Son, or Narmada and Tapti. Based on what we just covered regarding the Pattisima project, the correct answer is clearly B, Godavari and Krishna. This highlights why tracking the real-world implementation of these projects is so important for your preparation. Another ambitious proposal is the Ganga Amaravati Interlinking Project. This envisions taking water all the way from the Ganga River in Bihar down to the notoriously water-scarce Marathwada region in Maharashtra, routing it through the Amaravati River. If successful, it could completely transform Marathwada, alleviating severe drinking water shortages and reviving agriculture for millions. However, it is important to note that this project is still in its very preliminary stages, currently undergoing complex feasibility and environmental impact studies. In the 2020 UPSC mains, candidates were asked to critically examine how interlinking rivers solves the interrelated problems of droughts, floods, and navigation. To answer this, you must break down the benefits. For drought mitigation, the core argument is redistribution, moving water to scarce regions to secure irrigation and drinking supplies during dry spells. Conversely, for flood management, the network of canals and reservoirs acts as a pressure valve, transferring excess monsoon water away from flood-prone basins and regulating the overall flow downstream. Continuing with the 2020 mains analysis, you would then address navigation and other benefits. Interlinking creates a vast network of inland waterways, which drastically reduces freight transportation costs and boosts regional trade. Additionally, the dams required for these links generate significant renewable hydropower. Finally, an often overlooked point is salinity control. By ensuring a steady flow of fresh water down to coastal areas, we can push back against saltwater intrusion from the sea, protecting delicate coastal ecosystems and vital agricultural lands. To wrap up our discussion on the interlinking of rivers, remember that this is a grand infrastructural vision aimed at balancing India's regional water inequalities. Guided by the National Perspective Plan and soon to be managed by NERA, it promises massive gains in drought relief, flood control, and power generation. However, it is not a silver bullet. It faces severe ecological risks, complex political disputes between states, and enormous financial costs. Moving forward, any interlinking project will require rigorous environmental scrutiny and must be balanced with localized sustainable alternatives like rainwater harvesting.